So I think we've had some productive discussions, a little bit of talk about Bill Gates, and I will start with that. As always, Himanshu will agree to me. We have been on a panel earlier, and fortunately, unfortunately, this is the pre-lunch panel. So whatever AI we can get into it, the LLMs, SLMs, and TLMs, time is always at a premium. And I refer to Bill Gates, and why I am bringing this as a reference to context. In our daily lives, we are taking decisions where we are calculating backwards. From the simplest point of view, where you need to travel and reach, you calculate backwards where you want to be. And that's the cardinal rule that we should keep in mind when we are, planning, developing, and finding use cases for generative AI. I have a lovely set of panelists who are subject matter experts. Thank you to each one of you. Whatever generative AI we could get into this forum, I have two panelists whose organizational commitments kind of restricted them from being present here, and that control is beyond us. So when we look at, and I will again quote an example from what we just discussed, we look at a delivery partner delivering to us on time. Take your minds back to, say, airline, which always says we are on time by the clock, and the time has a 10 to 15 minute window, and by the time you land, the general announcements are that we have landed either before time or right on time. From the point of view of chatbots, again, I will quote, none of us have got adapted to interacting with chatbots as yet. Line ये आती है किसी आदमी या इंसान से बात कराओ. Whatever be the SRT template that the chatbot is using based on a language model that it would have been built on. And you are always looking at some human involvement, connect, and that is where, Mr. Tambe, my apologies, I use that line of HI, the human interface, interaction, and intelligence cannot be ruled out in any manner. So artificial intelligence should not be taken as something, or generative AI should not be taken as something that's going to threaten our jobs. It should be looked as a force multiplier, which will improve efficiency, provided handled the correct way, provided given access to the correct data sets, provided the logical outcomes that are being looked at in terms of decision making from the BFSI sector are customer centric, operation enhancing, and viable from the regulatory compliance point of view. So before I open up the panel, one small query, and I will request each one of you to do it in your own time. Take out your mobiles and just do a search of your favorite BFSI access gateway that you use, and just write a question: does that entity use AI or Gen AI? I can take it with a pinch of salt and quote it also. 90% of the responses will be yes, and 10% of the responses will be they are in the process of implementation. We have come a long way. ChatGPT, Runway, we've had DeepSeek, which has come up. And the closest that we interact on a day-to-day basis are Siri and Bixby, in the literal sense. And our kids have got attuned to asking questions. Nishant, my apologies, my kid does the same, and we were talking, asking solutions, answers to anything possible, because you have got adapted to them. Now, with this, as the context of what we want to talk about, and the topic at hand requires for me to ask certain questions, but I would request the panel members to give some introspective views from their perspective, their industry perspective, of how they feel that generative AI will change the landscape of the BFSI sector. So as a starter, one word for the topic at hand, and I start with you. From your perspective, one word for the topic at hand.
Oh, well, I think the one word from my perspective, being in the banking, I'll say innovation. That's a very difficult thing. Yeah, so
Go ahead, Rajesh.
I'll leave it to the innovation as one word, but I think it's slightly difficult to explain that way.
Okay.
But I'll leave it there.
So Keshav, from the way you look at things, one word.
I think disruption.
Excellent. Nishant.
Transformation.
Okay. Himanshu.
Customer delight, internal, external, both.
Okay. One word. Yeah.
I think game changing.
Okay. So broadly, these are the words that we keep on talking about every presentation that each one of us in our own forums will run across or run over or play out. Will have disruption, operational efficiency, transformation, changing the landscape, encouraging geographies to become more inclusive, etc. and etc. That is why I forced my panel members to come up with that one word, and we've come to the right set of words. So Himanshu, coming on to you, the Q&A is basically going to give the audience a perspective of regulatory compliance, risk, fraud mitigation, customer experience, and ultimately the human involvement and the road ahead. So Himanshu, the way I look at things is that there is a lot of transformation in the customer experience that has been enabled by artificial intelligence. Can you put to reference certain specific examples or use cases for the BFSI sector?
Yeah, sure. So before I start, a small disclaimer that whatever I'm going to say, it's my personal and individual statements. So see, as soon as we use this word AI or Gen AI especially, and not and the topic which says beyond bot, wherever we have data, and there is a play of AI, or now we are saying that Gen AI, which evolves with the data and the information which gets adds up. So see, one of the example which is very, very close to my heart, Akshay, is whenever we talk about call center, and whenever we are trying to increase the efficiency of the call center, and that's my personal belief again, we talk about AHT, is the average customer handling time. Say if that AHT is 5 minutes, and if you have implemented a AI or a Gen AI where all the information which is there in system can be popped up to the agent, and the query which takes normally 5 minutes can be solved in 1 minute, 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes at the max, you can save 3 minutes. And then normal behavior of any organization is then cut the manpower, save the cost. So whatever cost you are having for implementation of that solution, that shows the value for money. Whereas I'm having a very, very different view on this aspects that don't try to kill the, because nowadays in the era where we live, I have not gone to my branch in last 15 years of time. The account which I opened 20 years back, 15 years, I have not visited my branch. So my interaction with any branch manager or any official is whenever the RM calls me, that's it. This time, the remaining 2 minutes, if you can have additional information about the customer who is on the call, and if you can build relationship, is that human intelligence or the AI intelligence which was quoted, that can be a best use case where you can build relationship over the call, where solving the issue in 1 minute of time, the delight is already there, and then you are having additional information about the customer and engage with the customer further.
Okay, great point. So it takes us 15 to 30 seconds to exchange pleasantries, say hello, and exchange cards. And if we are looking at 2 minutes as the stack which we want to target, ideally in that 2-minute experience, I would want a solution, a better process to be given to me. And from Himanshu's perspective, I think it's a very valid point. So Keshav, coming on to you. There are certain aspects with regards to financial institutions in terms of risk management. And whenever we are looking at generative AI, there is one part of building a model set, and there is one part of mitigating risks. So how do you feel it is going to enhance risk management?
Great question. So good afternoon, everyone. Risk is at the heart of what we do in the financial institutions, right? Be it lending, be it payments, and it's prerogative for us to ensure that risk is something that is understood and managed. So since the topic is around Gen AI, let me emphasize the fact that with the evolving technology, right, what is happening now is that traditionally, we have always been looking at the data, historical data that we have, and basis that we have been predicting or trying to prevent things, right? But with the advent of technology, right, you're also being threatened by the AI itself when it comes to mitigating some of these risks. And it's important that since we have real-time threats that is coming, especially when it comes to real-time payments, credit decisioning, everything is becoming instant, right? The human intervention is reducing because the data is now far more enriched. So the way you look at risk is something where you ensure that the threats are detected real time, and that is only possible when the data source itself is smart enough and it's evolving with time. So when we have historical data versus the data that we have when it comes to Gen AI, it can actually do synthetic data creation itself, right? There are instances where it can actually do a lot of VAPT's assessment on its own by understanding what is happening across the globe. Of course, it has its own set of challenges when it comes to what kind of data can actually go to the LLM. And we have been talking about some of this outside, right? In terms of getting more clarity in terms of where it gets stored. But as far as risk is concerned, AI plays a very, very important role even today, right? While Gen AI is a fairly new phenomena, but if you look at the predictive analytics that risk mitigation engines that you used to do, right? All of us have EFRMs, which basically are rule-based, right? A very basic example, right? If you're using an ATM card in Mumbai and 5 minutes later your card is in person present in Delhi and you're trying to withdraw cash, right? A basic example of this, the system will prevent that transaction to happen because it has the rule that says that physical card cannot be present in two distinct geographies so far away from each other. But let's look at it from the perspective that if there are situations where these kind of things are being manipulated by different, let's say, mimicking a card or a different bin, some of those things are being encountered on a day-to-day basis where the system is becoming smarter and saying that, okay, if that is the case, then maybe we will use in the same location. If somebody identifies that the location identifier was the reason for the prevention of this fraud, what they can do is that they can simulate the same thing from the same location, and the system, the rule that we set, right, which was a very basic rule saying two distinct geographies and block the card, it's very easy to spoof that and say that, okay, if that's the case, we will use the same ATM to do the double transaction, and the fraud does not get prevented, right? But if you enhance to the saying that you have propensity, you have velocity checks built on that transaction, right, some of those things are far, far effective. Second thing is the biases that comes into decision making, right? When you make a model where you say that, if this is happening, then you do this. Mostly these are LF analysis that you put it into an FRM system. But when it comes to AI, it can actually do a far more sophisticated analysis, take faster decision, and also take preventive actions. So we are pretty excited about use of Gen AI, especially when it comes to efficiency, when it comes to real-time decision making, and particularly simulating a lot of synthetic data that they can generate. So let's say a small bank like us, we have 3-year vintage as an SFB, maybe prior to that around 22 years of cooperative banks. We have data which is limited, but when it has the ability to do multiple synthetic data generation, it can actually pretty much generate billions of data points and do a simulation and understand and enhance it, right? So that's something that we're pretty excited about. I think it's going to stay. It's going to help building more models, and there is no way that we will not be using this to prevent it. I mean, frankly, if the threat is coming from AI itself, let's say if the person who is trying to spoof the system is using an AI, it's almost impossible for a human eye to really prevent that, right? So if the other side is using a AK-47, perhaps we'll need an AK-47 on the other side as well, or maybe a drone to ensure that we capture it on time. Yeah.
So I guess from the AK-47 example, we've got this Mule Hunter AI that got launched around about 50 days back, RBI initiative, we all aware. 19 lakh mule accounts identified, 2038 crores, if I remember the number correctly, identified from those accounts. And it is kind of a convergence of using AI to track fraud within the perspective of regulatory guidelines. And this is the symbiotic relationship that we should look at when we are considering AI. So Rajesh, coming on to you, Keshav has given a perspective, and from the same perspective, I would want you to give a little different viewpoint in terms of the traditional methods of risk mitigation to the options that have now opened up with a generative AI coming up. Feel free to give some use case examples which you can possibly share without a content note that nothing should be taken from the perspective of what I am quoting, like Himanshu had done. So from that perspective, I leave it open to you.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for having me here. We are not, as a bank, so from CSP bank perspective, we are not in a race to implement AI because everybody is doing it. So generally we understand that when we look at AI, so there are three basic elements associated with it. So first is the business context. What am I trying to solve? What do I need to do with it? So if there is a powerful use case, then yes, of course, why not? The second is the right technology. What can I use to solve the problem? So NLP, natural language processing, neural network, so there are options available. The third is data. What kind of data sets are needed? How can I train those data sets? There are vectors involved, there are weights involved. How do I use this in a compelling way to achieve the intended outcome? So, and we just keep interacting with the businesses. So one of the case which came across specific in the bank, my chief credit officer came to me one fine day that, Rajesh, I have a problem. This customer we lended recently, very perfect customer, credit score more than 800, has been working for almost 17, 18 years, perfect credit history, and he has never defaulted any of his payments. And we lended this guy 6 months back. He has just paid one payment, and after that he has defaulted time and again for last 5 payments. So we don't know how did this happen, why the customer is not paying, etc. And how that we will find out, speak to customer, etc. But how do I avoid lending to these kind of customer? How do I know about it? It's a very difficult question to answer, right? You have got data points, and basis those data points, your systems make decisions, right? So you have got his credit score, his salary slips, his KYC, etc., etc. So like how the banks work typically. So this kind of triggered that probably we need more data sets which are in addition to the data sets what we have. Now, where do I get that from? So, of course, there are structured data sets which are available from your data systems, what your bank has or what the particular organization had. And then we realize that we need to see more of the customer behavior outside my bank's domain. So maybe it is available in the unstructured data domains, in the social media, or wherever the customer has been doing certain transactions, or all the possible sources which are available. And that work or that requirement initiated the work from the bank side, that how do we engineer a logic or a model which can help the bank in ensuring that we know well in advance about more of these kind of customers, so that we avoid lending to these kind of customers. So this is a classic AI use case what we have in the bank, what we are working on at this point of time. The work is not complete, but so, and as Mr. Tambe said, that a lot of work can be done through HI, so AI may not be needed all the time, but use AI when you have got the relevant case, powerful case to solve it.
So quite valid. I think somewhere the dilemma of how much data are we extracting, and there was a query that was raised in the previous to previous fireside chat within the framework of DPDP, where the consent has been given for a specific purpose, and how are we using it thereafter, and whether I have control over the consent for that data which I had shared or agreed to share, and how is it being used by the industry. So, Mahendra, I come on to you now, and there has always been this dilemma with regards to detection of frauds. Rajesh had briefly covered on the credit scoring aspect, and also with regards to mitigating frauds, and the maximum exposure that any entity that suffers with regards to fraud is the financial sector. Ultimately, it may be, my apologies, I'm from UIDAI. So it may be identity fraud or identity related financial fraud, which is what it finally transcends into. So we all read in the newspapers कि 5 लाख चले गया, 15 लाख चले गया, 3 crore चले गया, from the right set of people with the right education who have been industry experts, and they are themselves getting overridden by a picture that is presented to them and they are believing in it. So how do you feel generative AI will assist you in mitigation of fraud?
I think I'll answer this as a customer rather than representing a bank, right? I think, and we have seen this RBI itself. I have never seen in my life 100 feet hoarding of RBI on digital fraud. In the recent the cricket matches, RBI is putting the information on digital fraud. So I think one, it is more to do with behavior. I think one of the panelists talked about. So ultimately, it's your human behavior where, you know, you're concerned about your family member and the way it is put across to you. A police person in a uniform, you know, with the setup, telling and the end customer getting sucked into that notion that something bad has happened to my family person and I need to do something immediately. So I think awareness, customer awareness, I think it's number one, and I think that's happening both at a bank level and a RBI level. I think we need to do a lot more on that, right? That is on more on the front end, right? On the back end, I think it's very, very important that how do we leverage data, the existing data, and also, you know, in terms of how do we communicate that, or how do we, you know, make our systems more intelligent over time using both structured and unstructured data. And I think I'm not a fraud expert, to be very, very transparent with the audience and the panel. But I think each bank is working very, very hard, and each financial institution is working very, very hard, because one slip up can result into multi-million-dollar loss at a bank and at an institution level. So over time, I see there will be a lot of emphasis on getting as much data as possible. Just an example, we were looking at certain data set, and we realized for a large number of customers, the amount of data that we ideally should have, or if we have customer relationship for more than 10 years, we should really have pretty much all their data, but that doesn't exist in the system, because I think every bank or every financial institution is struggling with data. One, because of legacy system and having multiple systems, and certain data is sitting in CBS, certain data is sitting in LMS, and certain data is sitting in some other system, and they are all not stitched together. So I think data silos, I think, is one of the challenge which exists at different levels. Legacy, older financial institutions have much bigger challenge. Organizations like us, which are 3, 4, 5-year-old, has not that level of problem, but we have our other set of challenges. So I think having a holistic approach towards CDP as well as EDW, I think that's where I think financial institution will be able to ensure that how can we mitigate fraud, or how we can avoid the occurrence of fraud, and customer education, I think, has to be as much as possible in the face of the customer through multiple channels, RBI, financial institution, and also maybe we can involve government can also play their part.
So I think fair enough point. Data silos in we want integration to take place, and Keshav, I'll come to you in a second on this. Somewhere down the line, there will be a dilemma on ethics in terms of the accessibility, in terms of privacy infringement. Going back to you, Mahendra, and the example that you quoted in terms of giving training and having campaigns for educating customers, in spite of a lot of efforts being made by everybody, the institution, that is the government, the players in terms of the sector, BFSI sector, and ecosystem partners, whatever may be done. Again, one of the small odd examples, when you want to do a search of any courier company available to you, you do a Google search, 80% of the numbers that appear on that search are fake. 90% of the times the revert response from that will be in terms of a APK link, and 50% of those will be clicked, and more than 80% will be the swindling of money that will take place. So with this as a preamble, I come to you, Keshav. All of us are looking at leveraging quality output from data. We are looking at building data sets which give us end outcomes which enhance efficiency. Somewhere that dilemma will come again and always be at the back of my mind or our minds, that are we ethically going on the right track? How much of inroads into a personal domain we are making at the cost of enhancing operational efficiency from an institutional setup point of view? So your viewpoints on it, please.
Yeah. So as a financial institution, we are very privileged to have access to a lot of information that we carry. Broadly, if you look at it from the source perspective, you have to see every customer goes through a cycle of start from an onboarding process, right? When we do the KYC of the customer, apart from KYC, so for a lot of banks, the KYC, in fact, for all of us, it's not just about getting the documents. It's not KYB, right? It is about knowing your customer, which is documentation is a part of it. Let's say eKYC that we do from UIDAI, we do PAN checks, etc. These are something that all of us do, right? But we capture a lot of other information. Let's say an income profile of the customer, right? How much, what kind of education qualification the person has, right? Some of these things are also captured, and they are captured in a very protected environment inside the bank. There are also a lot of other consent that is being taken at the time of onboarding a customer itself, so that we can do multiple cross-sell campaigns. We can do a bureau scrub when it comes to, getting data from the credit history of the customer. And on top of it, there are a lot of AML checks that we do, right? Where, for example, when it comes to various kind of data published, publicly available information and various kind of paid databases, we scrutinize the customer, whether they have, let's say, pending legal cases against them, right? Whether they have defaulted on the previous loans. And we do a lot of internal dedupe also, right? A customer maybe 10 years back was a defaulter in the bank trying to take a loan again, right? So there is an internal set of data, there is an external set of data, and there are data that is provided by the customer. So while we take a consent for a lot of this, what has happened in the last 2-3 years, that a lot of surrogate data that has started flowing to our system. Let's say, and again, I'm not talking specifically about my bank, so this is my personal view, and when we talk about it, it's very easy now to get your EPFO details, which is not very relevant when it comes to opening a savings account, right? But as a bank, I'll perhaps know that, we have worked in the past, where all you have worked in the past, what was your vintage when it comes to how many years you have worked. The PF contribution data is available, and basis your consent, I have pulled that data. Now the question coming back to you, saying that when I pulled the data for a specific purpose, while I have the consent, for how long can I save that data with me, and what all that I can do with that data. Secondly, with this entire DPDP structure, if you as a consumer want to revoke that consent, that's a very, very tricky topic for us, right? While I'm okay to delete your EPFO data that I have my own fiduciary responsibility to store your transaction data, let's say for 10 years, even if you have closed the account, because tax authorities may, mandate me to provide and furnish those information. RBI reporting has to happen, right? So it is a fairly tricky topic when it comes to what is it that we can store, for what purpose, where all. But one thing is very clear, right? The ownership of the data resides with the customer as far as the spirit is concerned. There are legal obligations in which we will have to honor it. But when it comes to, and since we are at the topic of fraud, right? My experience has been that in a lot of time, the onboarding fraud, right? If you see, most of these customers have been actually doing their own authentication for many of them for, let's say, some sort of monetary benefits, right? So, for example, a lot of banks do biometric based onboarding, and those accounts become mule. Effectively, the person has actually given a consent to open an account, but there could be a possibility that one is that the customer is unaware of the kind of risk that they're taking, and second, there could also be a case where a bank employee or a financial service employee itself is also involved in some of those fraudulent activities, right? So how do we increase the awareness both for employees and customers? That's one thing that as an industry, I think all of us, including the regulators, including UIDAI, we are all trying to create awareness among the customers, because if the customer is not aware of the kind of risk that they're taking, right, many of them will actually get lured into doing things that is not something that they should be doing. On the AI side and also other side, now you have Mule.ai, where we have a repository, RBIH actually, with RBI, consolidating the data of all Mule accounts that has been used in the system, and we do an API call to ensure that those kind of customers are not onboarded by us. So it's a journey, right? There is no end state saying that, now we have like reached a stage where we say that everything is sorted, right? It's a journey. All of us are learning. And I think the learning curve of AI itself is pretty steep compared to what a human can do. While I'm not saying that this is and, it's a journey that all of us are undertaking. And at some point in time, this whole debate around data is something which will evolve over a period of time. We are still getting guidelines. We are still getting some guidance from the regulators in terms of what we need to do. And of course, there are issues around cloud versus on-prem, right? The security and data localization of those, and particularly when it comes to LLM, right? One of the questions that we always ask, one is the data, what flows into it, and you can actually encrypt it, you can do a metadata transfer, but what about the data localization? How many of these LLMs can say that, okay, we are India compliant, all the data remains inside the country's boundary, right? Some of those questions are being debated as we speak. Some of the AI LLMs have started hosting their data inside India. So it's an evolving space, and I think a lot needs to be done in that space. That's my 2 cents on it.
Okay. So rightly brought out, previously the misnomer was that majority of LLMs are US based, which stands to ground even now. But there has been indigenization, the right word for the flavor of the day that has taken place. And we have all understood DPI being one of the aspects which has been a game changer, that there is a lot of data that we are consuming, and the cost at which we are consuming it is not even 1/10 of what the Western region, when I say Western region, is the Western countries or developed countries that are using it, and the cost to ratio doesn't work out in their favor. Now, Himanshu, you brought a point, and I will come to you. The point you made was it's been 15 years since you visited a bank, and 15 years is a long time. AI and generative AI have come into the picture. There has been a lot of hyper personalization on products that has taken place, and in terms of services also. So, from your viewpoint, what do you feel will be the ideal way ahead in terms of use of generative AI for providing personalized solutions for better customer experience?
So we'll be very, very quick because time is short.
No, just hold on.
And
So whoever's
arms are
ringing the buzzer, give us around about 10 minutes more. We started late. So that my panelists are not under fear factor that they need to
That's fine. That's
wind up
absolutely
early.
fine.
Everybody will curtail their responses. I hope the MC is listening to me. Yeah, go ahead. I've
No,
set
but
the
still,
tone.
I can skip my question and I can just.
No, don't worry. I have to come to Nishant in any case.
So knowingly or unknowingly, what kind of, even if I keep regulation aside, what is being discussed about as what kind of data which can be shared, the kind of enormous data which is being generated around us, the kind of SMS reading consent what we give to the kind of applications we have in our mobile, what time we get up in the morning, what time, whether we are doing jogging or not, what kind of food we are eating, how many clubs membership we have, how many bank accounts we have, what credit cards we are having, which flight is our favorite, we travel by train or bus. So there is enormous data which is being generated around us. So there is one of the example which can be understood in the same fashion. Whatever industry you are, be it for loan, for insurance, for banking accounts, for wealth management, for any use case, these kind of data which is there in system, say for inclusiveness. So Many of the customers, especially in tier 5, 6, 7, where they don't have a CIBIL score or the first time borrower, what kind of a data is getting generated out of their bank accounts or the say one of the income tax guys raided one of the pani puri wala in one of the district for 40 lakhs of sale which was done by him, but tax was not paid because of the UPI which is there in the cash which is going out. The kind of data at that front is also getting generated, where now you can fund basically the transaction in the account, forget anything else. So the usage, how can we use that data there? The AI and Gen I plays a very, very important role, where which can basis your requirement of the product, how can you use that data to suit your requirement is the key now.
Okay, quite practical. That means I am going to get certain options that are going to be given to me based on my transaction spends or my access to products, or where in what manner am I having a spending routine in terms of a 30-day span, and a lot of other options get generated. All this will require some amount of automation to take place at the back end, and Nishant, you've been raring to go. So this one is for you. So from the AI perspective specific to the BFSI sector, there has been a lot of operational efficiency that has come into play with regards to processes, with regards to options in terms of solutions that you're looking at. So the query is, what processes have been automated? You may be generic in your response, but these automations have led to a process enhancement.
Sure. And thanks. And, so me, actually working in AI, and I'm very happy where, so I want everyone to talk about AI. So my success in my organization is, when the chief digital officer, the CIO, the business heads, marketing head, everybody's talking about AI. So I feel I'm successful. And in the same panel, where I don't have to talk about AI, if everybody has their thoughts and everybody is pro AI, so for me, that's a success. So I will talk about, the topic Gen AI, agentic AI. So there's a lot of confusion, and what is, what is process automation, and what is agentic AI, and so there are many use cases. I will just take an example of a couple of use cases, one in banking and one in, say, mutual fund. So it'll give an idea about, what is like agentic AI and what is Gen AI. How is it different from your regular automation? And I think in the previous session, we heard about a small code change here, small code change there. Obviously, all that should be done. It doesn't mean that if you have AI, Gen AI, you don't do your day-to-day work. We have to be efficient, and we should have done it 10 years ago. It's very unfortunate if, we have not put that, that small one-line code, but that doesn't mean that we will, we will not be doing what is Gen AI. So see, one use case today for banking and, for BFSI is, understanding customer sentiment. We say that we understand customers, but we don't truly understand the sentiment. So the same customer, so the customer comes on our chatbot, asks a few questions, gets some response. The same customer, say, goes on the website, navigates through some pages, and then, calls up at the call center. And at the back end, we don't have the stitching in place. Unfortunately, it is not there. In many of the global banks, forget about small Indian banks. So the stitching of the data in terms of your chatbot transcripts, your call center transcripts, and this is Gen AI, because this is the actual words of the customer when he has spoken to the call center rep, what he has typed on the chatbot. Now that data, nobody is looking into it today, and that data is very crucial, because if you collect the data, say, over a period of time, it helps you analyze and interpret that what is going wrong. The answer is always there. If you go and if you do an NPS survey, if you look at today, the world has changed. It is not that you are forced to do AI or Gen AI. All of us are demanding it. We are seeing it on apps that we use day in and day out. We use Ola, Uber, Zomato, and Zerodha. And when we get into a banking app, we want the same experience. We want it to be seamless. We want it to be intuitive. We want gamification. The next generation wants it. We may not want it. We are all 45 plus. But say a person like graduating right now, they want it. And if they want it, they are your next gen customers, you have to do it. So you have to be able to store your customer interaction, like you have to use LLM to interpret what is going wrong and then take action. Uh, and the stitching at the back end has to be done. You know, that one line of code change or 100 lines of code change, it has to be done. You know, so that's one use case. Now the second use case, like in the fund management industry, you know, for the past many years, your fund managers, your equity research team, you know, they do a lot of research manually. Like they go through a lot of company filing documents, they go through a lot of earning call transcripts, and then what they do is, you know, they interpret in terms of, you know, what is happening in the firm, and you know, so they have say set of firms within their portfolio or their index or their fund, and they keep monitoring in terms of any news with respect to the firm, like any org change, you know, any corporate action that has happened. They use data, but they also do a lot of manual reading through, you know, these documents and say news channel. Now this is a use case which has been cracked, you know, by Gen AI, and the large firms globally have invested. They have created index GPTs. They have created you know, Gen AI solution to be able to, you know, interpret this information and, you know, provide it to their fund managers. Yes, you know, so this is a very big use case where, like, how can we keep our fund management team, our equity research team up to date in terms of, you know, what has happened overnight. You know, like when you wake up in the morning, like how do you get those signals from, you know, how has say the US market behave overnight, you know, what has happened in say Shanghai market or your Korean market. Like you don't have to go through, you know, some 4 news channels and read Wall Street Journal and then interpret based on your capability. This problem is solved. You know, so there is a big use case out there for Gen AI. So there are many such use cases. You know, there's no dearth of use case, and this use case, it can be automated via agentic AI. You know, so your question on automation. Now, is it possible where you can, you know, can embed your LLM, you can create a vertical LLM within your own firm, and then you can, you know, embed it as part of an agentic AI solution where you can stitch it at the back end. You know, you have to do the stitching. Your CIO, your CDO, your chief AI officer have to sit together and do the stitching at the back end, use the LLM, you know, whoever gets it right. And I think only then you'll be able to address all these demands of your customers.
Okay, quite a valid point. We have, I will request the next 3 speakers to restrict to a little bit of time and keep the responses specific to a minute. Going back to Nishant, and I take a cue from intuitiveness, gamification. We all have ordered Ola and Uber. You look at the mobiles, before you place the order, you'll find 5-10 of those small dinky cars moving around, and you place the order and the nearest one will be 10 minutes or 15 minutes away and take another 5 minutes to reach you and keep on showing that reaching in 5 minutes and reach after another 5 minutes. So that is what you're looking at in terms of responsiveness. I am giving these small examples so that we understand and we take the right message back that there is generative AI at the back end. We experience it on a day-to-day basis. There is a financial transaction that gets involved when we are using that service, and still we expect more seamlessness. Now, coming to you, Rajesh, and after that, I'll come to you, Mahendra, and close with Nishant, and I have given the cue in advance. Somewhere, when we are looking at incorporating generative AI, there is always a dilemma, which I had made a statement on in the opening narrative that I had set, that how will it affect the employee roles? So, very briefly, from your viewpoint, how will it affect the employee roles?
Employee roles, I think I don't rule out the possibility that there will be some of the structural changes happening in the employee ecosystem. So if I look at the bank, where are the people sitting? It's in the branches, it's in the operation team, it's in the tech team, it's in the call center, it's in the underwriting. So that's where the most of the masses are there. Some of these roles can be automated. Automation is becoming intelligent using AI. So quite a lot of that repetitive work can be done through many of these solutions. So what do you need with so what do you do with the remaining people? Train them and make them usable for the other role. So employee paradigm will change. I still remember my days way back in 1995 when I used to set up telegram exchanges across all the states. I was in Jaipur outside chief telegram office, and there were about 200 people who were around me that he is the engineer who's setting up these machines, so all the people will lose their job, and nothing happened. So those people got retrained as for telephony, and telephony changed to something to data and the mobile. It will keep on happening. So reskilling, retraining, having the right attitude is the way out.
Okay. So if I may summarize, upskilling is the name of the game
Absolutely.
on a day-to-day basis and on a cycle-to-cycle concept.
Absolutely.
So you need to be aware what is going to kind of cause some disruption in your job profile and better upskill in time. So coming on to you, Mahendra, one small part that always causes a little bit of dilemma when we are looking at AI and generative AI specifically, that is regulatory compliance. So very briefly, how do you feel this issue can be managed and tackled in a manner where we are not in infringement with RBI, SEBI, Sarhasi or anybody else? I am not quoting me. Okay. So go ahead.
They've kept the tricky one for me.
Yeah.
So I think nobody in this room has an answer. I can very well say that. I think until unless you don't do it, questions are not asked. The moment you do anything around AI, the kind of questions that will come across, it's not easy to answer them, right? Because I think some of the topics which were covered were data localization and how much of data is getting through LLMs, where the data is getting transitioned, who is using it, who has access to it, who has the admin access, who is the super admin, how much data is, how much consent do you have. So I think both the regulator, or rather all the regulators that we have in India, and all the banks and financial institutions, I think we are on a path to, both sides are on a path where we are trying to understand. And I think every bank in this country, or every financial institution in this country, are having multiple POCs which are happening. Some POCs are working, some are failing, and as we move forward, I think we're trying to understand which is the right use case. Because to be very honest, I mean, I'll give you our personal example where we realized that it's better to have two human beings with MIS expertise rather to put a Gen AI dashboard, because the cost of putting that Gen AI dashboard was 10x than the cost of those two people who could have done the same thing. So I think it's going to be a mix or a balancing act between the ROI, the business use case, how much of the POC is able to succeed, and at the same time, whether from a regulatory standpoint, are we able to satisfy the regulator and have enough guardrails and all the compliances in place. So I think it's a work in progress as of today. And I don't think it's going to get, I don't think the industries will be there in the next 3 to 6 months. I think it's going to take 12, 24 months or maybe little more than that.
Okay. Very fair point, Nishant. Paucity of time, I'll come to you for the last remark. One future trend from the generative AI perspective, which you are looking at for the BFSI sector.
Sure.
And we'll call it a close after that.
So I'll just close it in a couple of lines. See, the future trend is, if you're going to set up a new GCC for a global bank in India today, or if you're a new bank, you are not going to, set up based on how you have been doing it earlier. For every function, whether it's, say, compliance, marketing, finance, business, you are going to look into that what can be done with AI or Gen AI. And then you're going to hire people where your AI or Gen AI can't solve the problem. So your entire GCC model, your entire banking BFSI is going to get disrupted. It is happening globally. It's going to happen in India. So gone are the times where you're going to open a GCC of some 500 people in Hyderabad doing things manually. It's not going to happen. And that's the theme and trend that we see. So we work in fund management. And as I was telling earlier, the number one theme which is disrupting globally is AI. So there is some reason and madness why, billions of dollars are being invested in US and every country, wherever you go. The sooner we accept and we question, each one of us, question what you are doing, why are you hiring this role? Like, can it be done? And then you hire and, set up, say, a GCC or a function, with respect to complementary roles. If you don't get it, you will be out of time.
Fair. I think we'll call it a close, and I will request any queries if there are. We'd be more than happy to connect with you on a person-to-person basis when we move out for lunch. When I was having a discussion with my panel members in the morning, and as a precursor to when we prepared a certain thought process which we wanted to bring forward, there was one point that I was always worried about was what should be the takeaway from this discussion. So I read through, and there are 3 lines that specifically came out of it. AI is the new virtualization layer of human beings. Human beings are the new Sherpas of data, and data is the new workload for conversational AI. So thank you to each one of you. I think you've been very supportive panel members, and for the audience, gratitude. You've been patient, and to the moderator, thanks for giving us additional time.